Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you guys are having a good start of the week. We are currently game 3 is currently going on between Dallas and Vegas, and Vegas is looking pretty good right now. But I wanted to get into something here. And I thought it was kind of interesting, especially with the drama and everything of the Coyotes. And I kind of wanted to do a little comparison of a few things. But before I get into that, if you are new to the channel and you love hockey, no matter what type of hockey it is, no matter whether it's the soap opera that is the Arizona Coyotes, the games on the ice, the jerseys. If you just love hockey in general, like I do, it would be awesome and greatly appreciated if you would hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to be notified of future videos that are uploaded, go ahead and hit the little bell, and you'd be notified anytime a new video is uploaded. Okay, so the whole drama of the Arizona Coyotes that's going on with, just everything that's going on, I wanted to do a little comparison of, the things that they're going through and the league response in comparison with other teams that did something that went through similar things and how the league responded to them. So I have some teams up here. Now, I wish my green were a little bit darker. I wish I had a little bit of a darker green, even though it shows it's supposed to be somewhat of a dark green. It shows up really light on this board. But I wanted to look at some comparisons of the Arizona Coyotes and what they're doing, what they're going through, and what these 4 teams went through in the 1990s. Now we start out here with the Minnesota North Stars. This one here, of course, kind of hits a little home for me and us here in Minnesota, because we were all we were all North Star fans. We were. They were in the league from 1967 to 1993 before relocating to Dallas, and they left. They were moved in 1993. And some of the reasons, one of them they say, was poor attendance. Even though, they didn't have the best records. They were, they didn't, they weren't, exactly, they weren't setting the world on fire. But in 1991, they did something that nobody expected. And this was the beauty of just getting to the playoffs. Because I believe their record that year, they finished 4th in the Norris Division. They I believe, were 25, 39, and 14. I think that's what their record was. Now, some people would look at that and be like, "Oh, that's atrocious. How would they make the playoffs?" Well, the way the playoffs worked, very kind of similar to how the playoffs work now, but it wasn't wild card based. It was all divisional based. Top 4 teams in each division got in. The Minnesota North Stars finished 4th in the division that year. And they beat the Chicago Blackhawks, who were the President's Trophy winners that year, the St. Louis Blues, who were, I believe, the 2nd or 3rd best team in the league that year. And then in the Campbell Conference Final, they beat the defending champion Edmonton Oilers to get to the finals, where then they ran into Mario Lemieux and the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they said, okay, that's enough of this. But 2 years after this run to the Stanley Cup Final, they're gone. Now the reasons being, at least from what they said the reasons were, was poor attendance, which, again, when you kind of got some, kind of bad years. The attendance is going to be low, but, it's still the state of hockey. We still love our hockey here. No deal on a new arena. Now, Norm Green, at the time, he kept saying that he was trying to get into the Target Center. The Target Center, which was built in 1988, he said, well, I want to get in there. The Target Center was never built for hockey. Never. It is not a hockey building. It never has been. So him saying that, I want to get the team into the Target Center, it was never built for hockey. You wouldn't, the attendance would have been nowhere near, the sight lines, everything would have been bad. It was built specifically for the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's why the Target Center was built, was because of the Minnesota Timberwolves, not the Minnesota North Stars. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense. But number 3, and I think the biggest reason why the North Stars left, was because of Norm Green and his sexual harassment lawsuits. He was the epitome of what a dirty old man was. He couldn't keep his hands in his pockets. He loved to basically, grab the secretaries. He was a very, he was creepy. He was a creep, basically. And that, to me, is the main reason, at least to me, I think the main reason why he took the North Stars out was because he had to get away from those lawsuits. So that's the way that's when the North Stars left. He also found a loophole in the arena lease that allowed him to get out of it. Now, this is before Gary Bettman comes in. Just 1 year prior. Gary Bettman's first year in the NHL was the first year of the Dallas Stars. So, if Bettman would have came in beforehand, would the North Stars have ever left? Probably not. At least but we don't know. Granted, even Gary Bettman realized after that a wrong needed to be righted, and the Minnesota Wild were born in the year 2000. Now, we move on here. Then we move over to the Quebec Nordiques. The Quebec Nordiques, of course, they spent 7 years in the WHA. From 1972 to 1979, they were in the WHA. And then when the WHA folded, they were brought into the NHL. So they were in the NHL from 1979 to 1995. Now, why did they relocate? One big reason, the low Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar was absolutely in the toilet. I mean, I think the Canadian dollar back then was worse than it is now. Right now, the Canadian dollar is worth about 74 cents American. It was even lower than that back then. So you had that. Plus, they needed to replace Le Colisée, which was, the arena that they had played in for years. And they needed a new building. They really did. They couldn't come to an agreement on the building. Also, the salaries, this is at the time the salaries are really starting to skyrocket. And there's no salary cap. So for these Canadian teams that are struggling, and of course you have the operating costs. The operating costs are increasing along with the salaries. And there's no salary cap. So even though the Quebec Nordiques never lost money, it was looking, they might have started losing money right before they left. And I think that, that was a big contributing factor. I think the bigger contributing factor, obviously, I think was the Canadian dollar. But not being able to get an arena done really didn't help the situation. So that is one of the main reasons why they left. And again, the NHL, now this is Gary Bettman. The NHL is like, well, They can sell to who, he can go to sell whoever he wants. So he sold him to that group based in Denver, and off to Denver they went, and they became the Colorado Avalanche. Now the Winnipeg Jets, same type of thing. They were a WHA team from 1972 to 1979. Then they were in the NHL from 1979 to 1996. So they left 1 year after Quebec did. Same kind of thing. Low Canadian dollar. The salaries were increasing, and there was no salary cap. They had operating costs that were increasing, but they also had very, very bad owners. The owners didn't know what the heck they were doing. They couldn't figure anything out. And it's interesting because this will migrate from here down to here. But the ownership was just they couldn't figure anything out. And they were, oddly enough, in 96, they were initially going to sell the team back to Minnesota. It was looking like Minnesota was going to end up getting the Winnipeg Jets. But it fell through. Because, where would they have played? The XL Energy Center wasn't even a thought yet in 1996. The only, that was the main driver of why the Minnesota Wild came back in, was because they needed a new arena, and Minnesota's like, hey, we'll give it to them. So they did. But yeah, the operating costs were increasing. No salary cap when the salaries are rising. Again, the low Canadian dollar. But this is a theme here, as it is down here. Bad ownership. So that's why the Winnipeg Jets moved to Phoenix, where they became the Phoenix Coyotes, and we will get to them. Then we got the Hartford Whalers. Again, another WHA team, 1972 to 1979, and then they were in the NHL from 1979 to 1997. These were the three teams, three of the four, because I believe they only kept four teams. And three of the teams were no longer. The other one was the Edmonton Oilers. So, yeah, they were in the NHL from 1979 to 1997. Now, it's interesting, when you look at this, 1995, 1996, 1997. So the NHL had no problem moving teams in the 90s. No problem whatsoever. The North Stars, the Nordiques, the Jets, the Whalers, no problem moving teams. No fight, no real effort from the league to keep them. Now, the Whalers, of course, what was their deal? Again, bad ownership. Peter Karmanos comes in, and almost immediately, he's talking about, wanting to move the franchise. And so he's working on a deal with the city of Connecticut, or with the state of Connecticut and the city of Hartford. They've got a deal almost worked out. And then he goes and pulls the whole, well, I want you to cover my costs, the money that I'm losing during the time the arena's being built. I want you to cover those costs for me. And Hartford said, no, we're not doing that. So right when they had an arena deal almost done, he goes and pulls that, and then he goes and he moves them to Raleigh, North Carolina, where they become the Carolina Hurricanes. So, and again, not a lot of effort to keep them there. But now we get to the important part. The Arizona Coyotes. We have reasons why they should relocate. They're very similar to all of these reasons up here. Number one, bad ownership. This goes back from when they were in Winnipeg. That franchise has always had bad ownership. They haven't had an owner that's really done much to help the team. Honestly. So, bad ownership. Again, no deal on an arena. Not that they didn't try. They tried to get the arena deal in Tempe. Tempe rejected it. Tempe apparently would rather have a landfill than have an entertainment district, where people could go have fun, stuff like that. They'd rather have their landfill. Number 3, they couldn't pay their own bills. They lost the lease in Gila River because they couldn't pay their bills. They were behind on the building rent. They were behind on basically everything, paying the vendors, everything. They literally were just a few days away from literally being locked out of their building because they were so far behind on their bills. They wouldn't pay it. Now, of course, bad attendance. I mean, yeah, you haven't had a team that's really been, they had the one good year in 2012. Even that year, their, attendance was better, but it wasn't great. Even in the run to the conference finals, their attendance wasn't that, they weren't selling Gila River out. They weren't. Another thing, they've been rejected by 4 cities. Phoenix, Scottsdale, what am I thinking? Glendale, and now Tempe. So 4 cities they've been rejected by. Now let's see. Phoenix, Scottsdale, Glendale, and Tempe. Yep. 4 cities they've been turned down by. They said, we don't want you. And, they're still bouncing around trying to find something. And the other thing, no financial stability. There's no financial stability in this franchise. None. Everything, they're cutting costs. They're violating the collective bargaining agreement by where they're staying and by the places that they're staying in, and the traveling that they're doing. They're cutting costs everywhere. They're basically turning it into a slapshot / major league situation where they're just cutting costs everywhere, and surprisingly, you almost expect them to start driving cross country on a bus. But the big thing here, you look at all these issues. These issues, a lot of these are the same as all of these up here. Did the NHL and Gary Bettman, did he step forth? Now, granted, the North Stars, Minnesota, it's a big hockey. It's a decent-sized hockey market. We're called the state of hockey for a reason. This was before that Bettman came in. So he didn't really have any input on the North Stars. But he sure had input on the other 3. And was there really any fight? Did Gary Bettman in the NHL step in and say, no, we have to keep the Nordiques. No, we have to keep the Jets. We have to keep the Whalers. We have to do whatever we can to keep them there because these are good hockey markets. The fans support them and all that. No, you didn't. And one of the big reasons why, from what I had heard, was why he was so eager to move the Nordiques, the Jets, and the Whalers. 3 letters. Right there at the top. WHA. So they come in from the WHA, and because they were WHA teams, Gary's just like, screw them. They need to move. No fight. No fight to keep them. The fans in that tried. The fans were trying to fight to keep those 3 teams where they were. But again, especially in Hartford here, the bad ownership, you normally, like the Minnesota Wild, when it comes to season tickets, you can do packages. You can do like 6 game packs, 10 game packs, 12, 15, 20. You can do all these different, season ticket packages. Hartford didn't allow that. Well, I shouldn't say Hartford. Peter Karmanos didn't allow that. He only allowed the full season packages. Well, you can't. How many people can afford that? How many people could afford that back then? But we come to find out that the reason why he did that was he wanted all the corporations to come in. He wanted the corporate people to buy those tickets. He didn't want fans. He wanted the corporate people to buy those, which told you just how much of a jerk he was. But then to go and backtrack on the whole, they've almost got an arena deal done. Then he goes and says, "I want this extra," and the city's like, screw it. We're done dealing with you. So then, of course, they lost the Whalers. But the NHL, especially with these three. Now, granted, there wasn't a lot of fight back from the NHL to keep the North Stars either. Even though Gary Bettman wasn't in there, John Ziegler was still the president at the time. And he didn't really fight to keep the North Stars in the league. We knew, as fans, the minute they changed the logo, the minute they went from this logo to just Stars, which was the very next year after that final appearance. That's when they went with Stars. That's when we knew something's up. Because why else would you change the name? Why would you go away from this logo? And this logo, this is from 1967. This is the original North Star logo. Why would you go away from that logo? All of a sudden you just put Stars. We knew something was up then, because then what happened after they moved down to Dallas? They kept that Stars logo, and they just put Dallas across the top of it. Interesting. But Gary Bettman was around during this time with the other three, with the Nordiques, Jets, and Whalers. They all moved within 1 year of each other. 95, 96, 97. And this team, of course, became this team. All the same issues here as the Jets had, but no, the NHL, no, we're not going to interject ourselves to try to keep the Jets in Winnipeg. They're going literally, balls to the wall to keep the Arizona Coyotes in Arizona because of the size of the market. It's a big market. We need to keep them. It doesn't work. It isn't working. It hasn't worked. And this is a team, they are plagued by the exact same things that these four teams up here were. But was there any pushback? Was there any fight back from Gary Bettman and the NHL to keep these four teams? None. But they are fighting, scratching, clawing, everything they can do to hang on to the Arizona Coyotes and keep them in Arizona. I don't understand. I don't understand it. I've never understood it. Now, granted, there were some contributing factors to Quebec and Winnipeg. The low Canadian dollar was a big part. The Canadian dollar was so low back then, it was very possible that in the 90s you only would have had two Canadian teams left, Montreal and Toronto. That's how bad it was. Those other teams were in trouble, big time trouble. The Oilers, the Flames, the Senators. Obviously, the Jets and the Nordiques left. But it was that close. It was very close to only having two Canadian teams in the NHL, in Toronto and Montreal. They would never have gone anywhere. They were two original six franchises. They weren't going anywhere. But all the other teams almost did. And so, you've got the low Canadian dollar being an issue, the salaries with no salary cap and everything. But when you look at a lot of this, a lot of the issues that the Coyotes are going through, it's the same. They're the same as some of these other teams. No deal on new arenas are a big thing. The Coyotes, they put that to a vote, and the voters said no. They're like no, because apparently there was the main sticking point was that the Coyotes were going to get tax breaks out of this, and the people in Tempe said no, we're not doing that. We're not paying our hard-earned taxes to go to them in the form of tax breaks, which is what's going to be interesting. The fact that they're still looking at other places like Mesa, and Scottsdale's come out. They've been talking about maybe Scottsdale again. You tried Scottsdale, it didn't work. They didn't want you. Mesa. I mean, everything the Coyotes are doing right now is literally a Hail Mary, and it's interesting too when they talk about the Coyotes. They're playing in Mullet Arena, which has a maximum capacity of 5,000 people. Now, of course, Bettman talks about you need to have NHL ready buildings. Mullet Arena is not an NHL level building, and when you couldn't get new arena deals done in Quebec or Hartford, let's move them. You're letting Arizona get away with playing in front of 5,000 people, but you have a problem with, like Colisée, the Hartford Civic Center, which is known as the XL Center now. Actual letters XL. And, they had fans. Their fans, even in those crappy buildings, when they were bad, were still putting more butts in those seats than the Coyotes do right now. But no real effort from the league to keep these teams. And that's what's frustrating, is because the little to no effort from the NHL to find a way to keep the North Stars, Nordiques, Jets, and Whalers in the league, but they're literally bending over backwards for Arizona because they don't want to lose that market. The true fans in Arizona, there are fans of the Coyotes in Arizona, and there are a bunch of them, but there's not enough of them. They are in a minority, and it's just to me the Coyotes are just absolutely grasping at straws, and I just I don't know, and that's why Fried, the hell's his? Oh God, Friedman. I'm having a brain fart on his first name. Let me know his first name in the comment section. But he'd come out and said, you want to be able to move into an NHL ready building, like with the Atlanta Thrashers in 2011. They moved into an NHL ready building because Winnipeg was all ready to go. So they had an NHL ready building and they could just stick them over there. Now, oddly enough, 2011, they moved a team that was out east to the west. They kept them in the east for 1 year. But it's not like there isn't precedent to moving a team from the west or from the east to the west or vice versa. Because Quebec moved from the east to the west when they moved to Denver. Now, Hartford Hartford didn't change conferences. They stayed in the same conference. The North Stars stayed in the same conference. The Jets stayed in the same conference. But you have seen instances of teams being relocated to a different conference. Quebec moving from the east to the west. And then, of course, Atlanta moving from the east to the west. They both moved from the east to the west, so it's been done. If you're looking for an NHL ready building, where has an NHL ready building that would be their building? That'd be Quebec. They don't have necessarily an NHL ready building in Houston, which has already been, which Bettman has already said that's not an option for the Coyotes because he wants to keep Houston available for expansion, which tells me they're thinking about expanding again. But, and then you have Salt Lake City. But these are bad. These, again, it's the same type of thing that Norm Green said he tried to do with the North Stars and put them in the Target Center. It doesn't work for hockey. They're not hockey arenas. You have to renovate the entire building to make it, possible for basketball and hockey. Hockey rinks will not work in those arenas right now. You've got to spend, a couple $100 million to renovate the entire place to make it suitable for hockey because the layouts are so much different. So, I don't know. I don't know what ends up happening with the Coyotes. This whole thing is just a giant cluster. But I thought it was interesting to look at some of the reasons why these teams left and how similar they are to what the Coyotes are going through. But to look at the effort that the NHL put in to keeping these four teams in comparison to keeping this team. And how it is night and day. No other franchise in the league will get the kind of privilege that these guys are getting. None. I've said this before, and I'll say it again here. If the Minnesota Wild somehow lost the lease to the XL Energy Center, and they said, "Okay, we're gonna play in Mariucci Arena where the Golden Gophers play." Now, Mariucci Arena, their capacity is practically double the amount of Mullet Arena in Arizona State. Do you really think the NHL would let the Minnesota Wild play out of their college arena? I give you one word: no. They would not allow that. They would try and move them like that. They would say, there's no way we're going to allow you to play in a college arena because it's not NHL. It's not up to NHL standards. But yet Mullet Arena is? 5,000 seats? They are? It's crazy. The Coyotes are getting... I mean, they're getting a league, like I said, they're bending over backwards for this team that is just, it's proven it's not working. They've been turned down by 4 cities in the state of Arizona, and no other franchise in the league today would get that kind of deal. I mean, Calgary. Gary Bettman's gone and said to Calgary, God, it'd be a shame if you couldn't get a new arena done. It'd be a shame if we had to move you. So you'd move Calgary. A great hockey market, great fans. They sell out most of their, they sell out a lot of their home games. You'll move them before Arizona? I'm telling you, I don't get it. And I think it's time to pull the plug on these guys. Give them the one more year in Arizona, and then find somewhere else for them to go. I think it's. But I thought it was interesting to kind of look at this and see the amount of effort that has been given to the Coyotes that was not given to these 4 teams. Nowhere near the same amount of effort. The league didn't even object to any of these other 4 teams moving. None whatsoever. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. I'd love to know what you guys think. And does it infuriate some of you guys too? The lack of effort that was given to the North Stars, Nordiques, Jets, and Whalers that is being given to the Arizona Coyotes kind of ticks me off, because these are genuine hockey markets. Arizona's not. The only reason the NHL is going so hardcore for these guys is because the market size. Doesn't matter about fans. Doesn't matter about fan support. It's all the size of the market. These 4 teams, great hockey markets. These 3, not real big markets, but incredible hockey markets. Great fans. Fans would support them. Fans do support the Winnipeg Jets. They sell out basically every home game. Hartford and Quebec, great fans. And they won't even get another crack at another team. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know if it drives you guys as crazy as it does me, that the amount of effort given to the Coyotes in comparison to the lack of effort given to the other 4 teams. Love to know what you guys think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell too if you want to be notified of any future videos that are uploaded. Go ahead and do that if you haven't done that yet. And again, yeah, I thought it would be kind of interesting to go and look back at some of the reasons why these 4 teams left and why this team is still around and yet continue to be propped up by the NHL. Let me know what you guys think. Again, hit like and subscribe. Hit the little bell too to turn on notifications if you haven't done that already. And I will see you guys later.